All right, now we're ready for example number 2. This is actually a song. It's called Welcome to the Jungle, and it's by a band called Guns N' Roses. Here is an excerpt from this song. Remember, songs are just like poems. In the jungle, welcome to the jungle. Watch it bring you to your knees. I want to watch you bleed. Welcome to the jungle, we take it day by day. If you want it, you're gonna bleed, but it's the price to pay. And you're a very sexy girl that's very hard to please. You can taste the bright lights, but you won't get there for free. In the jungle, welcome to the jungle. Feel my serpentine. Oh, I want to hear you scream. Welcome to the jungle, it gets worse here every day. You'll learn to live like an animal in the jungle where we play. If you hunger for what you see, you'll take it eventually. You can have everything you want, but you better not take it from me. Go ahead right now, see if on your own you can find examples of images, symbols, and the tone. When you're ready, we'll review this together. All right, just like last time, we're going to start with images. Well, let's remember that we're looking for examples, usually in the form of adjectives. There is not a ton of adjectives in this poem. We do see, unfortunately for you 6th graders, this word sexy, which I'm going to underline, not circle, sorry. I also see you can taste the bright lights, right? I can imagine bright lights, so I'm going to annotate this as imagery. I can keep going through. A scream is a sound that I can hear. So here's another example of imagery. I see it gets here worse every day. Welcome where we play. Hunger is definitely a sense of mind that I experience daily. Okay, you'll see it eventually. So you can see this isn't a poem that is too full of images. Certainly there's the image of the jungle, which I can imagine, but as we're going to explore later, this isn't exactly what it seems at first, but I certainly, with this repetition of the word jungle, see a jungle with, trees and monkeys and things. We're going to explore a little bit more about what the author is talking about when he refers to the jungle. All right, so what is the author talking about when they talk about the jungle, right? In this article, or in this poem, excuse me, it's a little bit tricky, but we're talking about, right, like bright lights. You won't get there for free. I want to hear you scream. It gets worse here every day, right? It's where we play. I'm going to just circle the jungle here. I'm going to also circle some of the clues that are hinting at what the jungle could stand for, right? We certainly have lots of examples of figurative language. It's going to bring you to your knees. That's not actually talking about you literally getting down on your knees, but something bigger than this. Even I want to watch you bleed. The author is not actually talking about watching you bleed. There's something more to it. But I'm not able to really figure it out until closer to the 2nd and the 3rd stanzas. Here we see, we take it day by day. And this is a really good example because I often heard my parents talking about when I was growing up, like taking each day as it comes, like things were hard when we were growing up. And so I'm starting to get a hint about what the jungle could be talking about. I'm going to keep going though. You're going to bleed. I don't think they're actually talking about bleeding. I think that this is another symbol, so I'm circling this one. But I'm going to come back to this because I think this is a second symbol that is different from the jungle. I'm going to keep going, right? You can taste the bright lights, but you won't get there for free. This whole line is a metaphor, which, as we've talked about, are usually symbols or suggestive of symbols. All right. I'm starting to think and get the hint that when they talk about the jungle, they're actually talking about a city, specifically a busy city. So I'm going to write over here, the jungle represents a city. And here's why. In the jungle or the city, we take it day by day, right? Things are hard. It brings you to your knees. It might make you want to pray, or it can make you feel like you're suffering. When they talk about, I want to watch you bleed, there's a lot of things that this could be symbolizing, right? I think about bleeding and I think about pain. I think about suffering. I also think about that phrase like you're bleeding your money, right? You're losing all of your money. So I'm going to label over here, bleed is a symbol of suffering. All right. We also see, right, the jungle, you can taste the bright lights, but you won't get there for free, right? Cities are full of bright lights and exciting things, but they're not easy. You have to work hard for them, and you have to work hard for that good life. We keep going, right? Welcome to the jungle. That's that repetition. Welcome to the city. Feel my serpentine. They're not actually talking about this. It's something scary, right? I want to hear you scream. We'll talk about these more with tone. It gets worse here every day, right? This is very similar to the phrase, we take it day by day. This is repeating this similar messaging with a symbol. You learn to live like an animal. I see that like, and I am triggered for a simile, so I know that this is a sign of figurative language. You learn to live like an animal in the jungle, right? In this case, he's talking about people, right? The animals are symbolic of people in the city, right? Crazy people in the city. So the animal, I added too many L's there. The animal equals people, right? We could keep going with this, but I think that this is a good representation of some of the symbolism that's taking place in this poem. Let's move forward now and talk about tone, right? I see that the author of this poem is using the phrase welcome very frequently. I see it here, I see it in the second stanza, I see it again in the second stanza, I see it in the third stanza, but I have a feeling they're not actually like welcoming someone like you would welcome someone who you're looking forward to seeing into your home, because there are a lot of other phrases in here that hint at a different kind of tone. Watch you bleed, right? We see like hard to please. I double underline that. Notice when we annotate poetry, it gets really messy. This is the way it's supposed to be. I want to hear you scream, right? Double underlining this one. There's another example of the tone. Gets worse here every day, right? It's okay that this is representative of both symbolism and of tone. Live like an animal. Hunger for what you see. Can have everything, but you better not take it from me. This line in particular, I think, is very representative of the tone. It is very threatening. I'm going to label this here as a threatening tone. I think this poem is quite aggressive or mean or a little bit angry, right? They're talking about and comparing the city to a jungle, and they're saying a lot of things about bleeding and snakes and screaming, so the tone is certainly not a pleasant one. Let's think now about this question after you've taken all those notes. Which literary term is this mostly an example of? Tone, imagery, or symbolism? Now this is pretty clear to me after going through all of these annotations here. Let's start our frame as the same as we did previously. The poem, Welcome to the Jungle, best represents blank because blank. And you're going to fill in what literary term this best represents and tell me why. Give us an example of one of those types of the literary terms that you're using.
Let's look at the third example, titled The Second Coming by Yeats. We have a small excerpt here from this poem. Let's read it together. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. These two lines are all an example of one type of literary device. Go ahead and write it in the margin right now if you think you know what it is already. Okay, I'm going to double underline both lines because both lines are an example of tone. Remember that tone is the author's attitude about the subject. Okay, let's look at the subject. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Okay, so he's talking about the world and life that we live every day. So we could say that the world is a symbol for life, our lives. And the author obviously has a clear tone or opinion about the world, that the world falls apart, the center of the world or the center of our life can't hold. We're not stable. And that mere anarchy, which is chaos, right? War, hunger, people killing each other, is loosed upon the world, meaning that everyone in the world is doing this and participating in chaos. So he has a very severe tone or opinion about the world. So we're going to say the tone of this excerpt, the second coming, is very ominous. And ominous means that it's foretelling doom, right? That the world is going bad. Go ahead and answer this question on your own. If you need to, look at the sentence starter that we used for the first two examples. Which literary term is mostly an example of tone, imagery, or symbolism? And remember to say why.
We're moving on now towards independent practice. You're going to do this poem on your own. We will read it for you one time through. You can listen to it as many times as you need in order to annotate for imagery, symbols, and tone. The poem is I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, and it is by William Wordsworth. Here is the poem. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. As I said, I recommend you listening to that poem more than once. Go ahead and pause so that you can annotate for imagery, symbolism, and tone. When you're ready to move forward, unpause. Now that you've annotated for that poem, you're going to describe which literary term is this mostly an example of, tone, imagery, or symbolism. Remember to explain why and use complete sentences as represented in the frames from our previous questions.
Now we're ready to move on to our exit slip. Identify the literary device being used in the song, poem, or sentence. So you're going to circle whether it's an example mostly of symbolism, imagery, or tone.
Congratulations! If you've made it through this assignment with all of the components complete and your name on it, you're ready to move on to the activity phase. Go ahead and return to the website for Ms. Donaldson and Ms. Antonsen's class. You may explore any of the poetry pages that are on that site. Remember, though, that you need to stay on these websites only, and if you are seen on another website, or if you're seen exploring these websites without having completed your work, you'll be in big trouble. Good luck! I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Make sure that you turn this in.